Step out of the vehicle now, or I will make you step out. Officer Tyler Grayson snapped, his voice sharp with authority, completely unaware that the calm black woman he was targeting was just minutes away from bringing down a level of power that would end his career on the spot. What he thought was a routine act of control would turn into a complete collapse, because the woman he chose to attack was connected to an elite force he could not even comprehend. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The highway outside Fayetteville, North Carolina stretched long and quiet under the golden light of late afternoon, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to happen and every passing car blended into the same steady rhythm. Serena Brooks drove calmly along the right lane, her hands resting at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, her posture relaxed but precise. The sunlight filtered through the windshield, casting a soft glow across her face, reflecting in her eyes as she scanned the road ahead with quiet focus. There was nothing about her that stood out, nothing that suggested anything unusual. Just another driver, moving through an ordinary day. Behind her, a patrol car appeared, merging onto the highway with subtle intention. At first, it seemed like coincidence, another vehicle joining the flow of traffic. But then it lingered. It did not pass. It did not fall back. It followed. Serena noticed it in the rearview mirror, her gaze holding for a moment longer than necessary before returning to the road ahead. Her breathing remained steady. Her posture did not change. The patrol car edged closer, its movements deliberate now, controlled, as if a decision had already been made. Then the lights flashed. Red and blue cut sharply through the calm, reflecting across her mirrors, across the asphalt, across everything in sight. The quiet of the highway fractured instantly. Serena exhaled slowly, signaling and guiding her vehicle toward the shoulder with smooth precision. Gravel crunched beneath her tires as she came to a controlled stop. Inside the car, everything remained composed. She placed both hands clearly on the steering wheel, visible, still, exactly where they should be. In the mirror, she watched as the patrol car pulled in. Behind her, the lights continuing to pulse in steady rhythm. The driver's door opened. Officer Tyler Grayson stepped out, adjusting his uniform as he closed the door with a firm push. His posture carried immediate authority, his movements confident, almost rehearsed. His boots struck the gravel with a steady cadence as he approached, each step deliberate, each step reinforcing the control he believed he held. Serena watched him through the side mirror, her expression calm, observant, as though she were not just witnessing the moment, but measuring it. The distance between them closed slowly, inevitably. And as he reached her window, resting one hand near his belt, the air shifted, no longer quiet, no longer routine. Something had changed, and standing there at the edge of that moment, only one of them understood exactly how far it was about to go. Officer Tyler Grayson stopped at the driver's side window, his shadow stretching across the door as the flashing red and blue lights reflected sharply against the glass, distorting his expression into something harsher than it already was. He tapped once, sharp and impatient. Serena Brooks lowered the window slowly, deliberately, her hand returning to the steering wheel the moment it was fully down, visible, still controlled. License and registration. Grayson said without greeting, his tone clipped, already edged with irritation. Serena met his gaze calmly. "Of course," she replied, reaching slowly toward her bag on the passenger seat. "Slow," he snapped immediately, his hand hovering near his belt, his voice rising with unnecessary urgency. Serena paused mid-motion, then adjusted, moving even more deliberately, retrieving her wallet and handing it to him without sudden movement. Grayson snatched it from her hand, flipping it open with quick, impatient motions. His eyes scanned the license, then lingered, as if searching for something that justified the tension he had already created. "You know why I pulled you over?" he asked abruptly. Serena shook her head slightly. "No, officer." The calm answer irritated him. "You were drifting in your lane," he said, though his tone suggested the reason itself did not matter. "That is suspicious." Serena's gaze remained steady. I stayed within my lane, she replied quietly. Grayson let out a short laugh, dismissive. You telling me how to do my job now? He said, straightening, his voice louder, more performative as a passing vehicle slowed slightly, the driver glancing over. The moment was no longer private. Grayson leaned closer again, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel more personal. Step out of the vehicle, he said. Serena did not move immediately. May I ask why? She said calmly. The question landed like defiance in his mind. His jaw tightened. Because I said so, he replied sharply. Serena studied him for a brief second, then unbuckled her seatbelt, the soft click sounding louder than it should have in the tension. She opened the door carefully and stepped out, her movements controlled, her posture upright, her hands visible. Grayson stepped back just enough to allow space, but his stance remained rigid, his eyes fixed on her, as if expecting resistance. Turn around, he ordered. Serena complied, without hesitation, turning slowly. Hands behind your back, he added, his tone escalating again, pushing beyond routine. Serena placed her hands behind her back, her posture still calm, still composed. Grayson moved in immediately, grabbing her wrist with unnecessary force, pulling her arm higher than required. Do not move, he snapped, though she had not moved at all. The cold metal cuffs appeared in his hand, and with a sharp click, they closed around her wrists. The sound cut through the quiet roadside. In the distance, another patrol car began to approach, its presence growing. And as Serena stood there, restrained but unshaken, the line between authority and something far more dangerous had already been crossed, even if only one of them understood what that truly meant. The second patrol car pulled in behind Grayson's cruiser with a sharp crunch of gravel, its presence turning the quiet roadside into something heavier, more deliberate, and Officer Tyler Grayson did not hesitate to use it. Right on time, he muttered, tightening his grip on Serena Brooks's arm as if the added authority justified the force he was already using. The door of the second cruiser opened, and Officer Kevin Jenkins stepped out, his posture casual at first, but quickly sharpening as he took in the scene. Serena restrained, hands cuffed behind her back. Grayson standing too close, too aggressive. What have we got? Jenkins asked, his tone neutral but alert. Non-compliant, Grayson replied immediately, his voice loud, confident. Suspicious behavior, refusing to cooperate, could be hiding something. The words came quickly, rehearsed, as if saying them out loud made them true. Serena stood still, her posture upright, her balance steady despite the tension in her wrists. I have complied with every instruction, she said calmly. The contradiction lingered in the air. Jenkins glanced at her, then back at Grayson, his expression tightening slightly. She does not look like she is resisting, he said quietly. Grayson's head snapped toward him. Looks can be deceiving, he replied sharply. You want to take responsibility if she pulls something? Jenkins did not answer, but the hesitation was enough. Grayson turned back to Serena, stepping closer again, his voice dropping, more personal now. Spread your feet, he ordered. Serena complied without hesitation, her movements precise, controlled. Grayson moved behind her, conducting a search that was more forceful than necessary, his hands pressing harder, moving faster, as if trying to prove something rather than find anything. Passing cars slowed. A driver rolled down a window, slightly. Another vehicle pulled onto the shoulder farther back. Phones began to appear, held discreetly but unmistakably. The moment had expanded beyond control. You see this, Grayson said loudly, glancing toward Jenkins and then toward the road. This is what happens when people think they can ignore the law. Serena's voice came quietly, cutting through the noise without rising above it. The law is not what you decide it is, she said. Grayson stepped around her again, his face tightening, the edge in his expression now unmistakable. Right now, he said, pointing a finger inches from her face, it is exactly what I say it is. He grabbed her arm again, pulling her slightly forward, unnecessary, forceful, asserting control for the sake of it. Serena adjusted her balance without resistance, her gaze steady, her presence unchanged. "You are making a mistake," she said softly. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his eyes, irritation mixed with something less certain. Then it vanished. He tightened the cuffs slightly, the metal pressing more firmly against her wrists. "No," he said, louder now, almost offensive. "I'm making sure I am safe." Around them, the roadside had transformed into a stage of observation. Every movement watched, every word captured. And as Serena stood there, calm, stoic, commanding even in restraint, the imbalance between them had become unmistakable, not because she resisted, but because she did not need to. The tension did not break. It tightened further, stretching into something sharper, more deliberate, as Officer Tyler Grayson leaned into the moment instead of stepping back from it. "Search the car," he ordered abruptly, his voice cutting through the air with renewed authority. Jenkins hesitated, his eyes shifting toward Serena Brooks, then back toward the vehicle. "Do we have probable cause?" he asked quietly. The question lingered, fragile but necessary. Grayson's head snapped toward him. "You questioning me?" he said, his tone dropping, colder now. Jenkins shifted his weight, the unease visible. "I'm just asking," he replied. "Then stop asking and do your job," Grayson snapped. Jenkins nodded reluctantly and moved toward the car, opening the door and beginning a search that felt slower now, less confident, his movements lacking the certainty that had filled the scene moments earlier. Behind them, more cars slowed. One driver stepped out, phone raised openly now. Another leaned against their vehicle, watching. The roadside had transformed into something undeniable, a moment that no longer belonged only to the officers. Grayson turned back to Serena, stepping closer again, his presence invasive, his voice lowering, more personal. "You think standing there like that changes anything?" he said. Serena met his gaze calmly. "No," she replied, "but what you're doing does." The words landed clean, cutting through the noise, and for a brief second, something flickered in his expression, doubt, irritation, something he could not quite define. Then it hardened again. "You are not in a position to tell me anything," he said, louder now, as if reclaiming control required volume. He grabbed her arm again, pulling her slightly toward the patrol car, the movement unnecessary but deliberate. Serena adjusted her balance without resistance, her posture steady, her gaze forward. "You should stop," she said quietly. The words came again, not louder, but heavier, carrying a weight that did not match her position. This time, Grayson did not laugh. He stared at her for a moment, longer than before, as if something in her certainty did not align with what he believed. Then he exhaled sharply, turning away from her, dismissing the moment entirely. "We are not done here," he muttered. Jenkins continued searching, opening compartments, moving items, his actions slower now, his attention divided. The tension in the air shifted again, not visible, not loud, but undeniable, something building beneath the surface of everything unfolding. Serena stood still, calm, stoic, commanding even in restraint, her presence unchanged. And as the scene continued, as the noise of movement and authority tried to fill the space, something else had already taken hold, something quiet, something precise, something that would not be stopped, even if no one there could yet see it coming. The tension reached a point where even the smallest sound seemed amplified. The rustle of wind across the roadside, the faint hum of distant traffic, all of it pressing against the moment as Officer Tyler Grayson stood there, his patience thinning into something sharper, more deliberate. "All right," he said finally, his tone shifting back into something procedural, though the arrogance remained. "We're done playing around." He stepped toward his patrol car, pulling out a citation pad, flipping it open with quick, practiced motions. "You are getting cited for obstruction and failure to comply," he continued, his voice louder now, as if the declaration itself restored his authority. Serena Brooks stood exactly where she had been, her posture unchanged, her hands still restrained behind her back, her gaze steady. "Those are not valid charges," she said calmly. Grayson did not look up. "They are today," he replied, pressing his pen harder than necessary against the paper. Jenkins lingered near the vehicle, quieter now, his earlier hesitation deepening into something more visible, something closer to concern. The flashing lights continued to pulse, casting sharp colors across the growing crowd, turning the roadside into a stage of observation. "Sign here," Grayson said, tearing the paper free and holding out toward her. Serena did not reach for it. "I will not sign something that is not lawful," she said. That response forced him to look up, his expression tightening as he stepped closer. "You do not get to decide what is lawful out here," he said, his voice dropping colder now. Serena met his gaze without hesitation. "No," she replied quietly, "but I do understand who does." The words settled into the space between them, heavier than anything that had been said before. For a brief moment, Grayson paused, just long enough for the smallest flicker of doubt to surface. "What is that supposed to mean?" he asked, his tone sharper now, less certain. Serena took a slow breath, her voice unchanged. "It means you still have time to end this correctly," she said. "Remove the cuffs. Step back. And let this stop here." The offer was not emotional. It was precise. Final. Jenkins shifted slightly his eyes, moving between them, sensing the weight of the moment. The road remained quiet, the tension pressing into every second that passed. Grayson stared at her for a moment longer, something in his expression almost breaking, almost recognizing what stood in front of him. Then he exhaled sharply, shaking his head, a short laugh escaping as he stepped back. "You think I'm the one who needs to step back," he said. "You are the one in handcuffs." He folded the citation and slipped it into his pad. "We are done here," he added dismissively. Serena did not respond immediately. She simply looked at him, her expression calm, her presence steady. Then she spoke, her voice softer than before, but carrying more weight than anything else. "That is why this is going to end the way it is." Grayson turned away, dismissing her completely. "Yeah," he said, "I will take my chances." And in that moment, without realizing it, he sealed the outcome that had already begun, leaving behind only the quiet certainty that everything from this point forward would no longer belong to him. The highway fell into a strange, suspended quiet, as if even the wind had slowed to watch what would happen next. And Officer Tyler Grayson, standing with the citation pad still in his hand, seemed to settle back into himself, convincing his own mind that the moment had already passed. "All right," he said, his tone flattening into something routine again. "We are wrapping this up." He tucked the citation back into his pad and gestured dismissively toward Serena Brooks. "You will stay right there until I am done." Serena remained exactly where she stood, her posture unchanged, her presence calm, her gaze steady. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The flashing lights continued their rhythm, casting red and blue across the pavement, across the vehicles, across the faces of the small crowd that had gathered at a distance. Jenkins stood near the open car door, his movements slower now, his attention divided between the search and the tension that had not resolved. Then Serena spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. "This is your last chance." The words were not raised. They did not need to be. They carried weight simply by existing. Grayson did not turn immediately. His hand tightened slightly around the edge of the citation pad. A subtle shift, almost imperceptible. "You keep saying that," he replied after a moment, his tone attempting confidence, but missing its mark. "Like something is about to happen." Serena did not move. "It is," she said. The certainty in her voice did not rise. It settled. For a brief second, the silence that followed felt different, heavier, as if something unseen had already crossed into motion. Jenkins looked up again, his eyes narrowing slightly as he glanced down the road, then back toward them. Grayson let out a short breath, shaking his head as if rejecting the feeling altogether. He turned back toward Serena, stepping closer, his voice lowering, edged with irritation. "You are in handcuffs on the side of the road," he said. "You do not get to make predictions." Serena met his gaze without hesitation. "I'm not making a prediction," she replied. "I'm giving you a chance." The words landed clean, precise, final. For a fraction of a second, something in Grayson's expression shifted, something dangerously close to doubt. But pride moved faster. He let out a short, dismissive laugh, stepping back as he waved a hand toward her. "Yeah," he said. "I think I will take my chances." He turned away again, placing the citation pad against the hood of the patrol car, his movements sharp, decisive, as if the act of turning his back ended the moment entirely. But the silence that followed did not disappear. It deepened, and standing there, restrained but unmoved, Serena Brooks did not say another word, because the moment for words had already passed, and what came next no longer required them. Grayson had just turned away, his back partially to Serena Brooks, when a sound reached them, faint at first, almost blending into the distant hum of the highway, but then it grew, steady, synchronized, unmistakably deliberate. Jenkins was the first to react, his head lifting sharply as his eyes narrowed toward the road. "Do you hear that?" he said quietly. Grayson did not turn immediately. "It is just traffic," he muttered, dismissing it. But it was not traffic. Within seconds, the low rumble intensified, controlled, precise, and then the first black SUV appeared over the rise, moving fast but disciplined, followed by another, and another, each one maintaining exact distance, exact alignment. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Passing cars slowed. The small crowd stepped back, phones rising higher now, capturing something far beyond a routine stop. Grayson turned fully this time, his expression tightening as confusion replaced certainty. "What is going on?" he began, but the words faded as the vehicles came to a coordinated stop along the shoulder, doors opening in near-perfect unison. Men stepped out, not hurried, not chaotic, but controlled, their movements efficient, their presence overwhelming without a single raised voice. Jenkins took a step back instinctively, his posture lowering, his earlier uncertainty now turning into quiet submission. Grayson did not move. He could not. His eyes locked onto the scene, his breathing uneven, something unfamiliar rising beneath the surface, fear. From the center vehicle, a man stepped forward, older, composed, his posture carrying a different kind of authority, one that did not need to be proven. Colonel Marcus Brooks. His gaze moved once across the scene, taking in every detail, the patrol cars, the positioning, the cuffs on Serena's wrists, and then it stopped. On her. Serena did not move. She stood exactly as she had been, calm, stoic, commanding, her presence unchanged despite everything. The colonel stepped forward, each movement deliberate, measured, until he stood just a few feet from Grayson. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, in a voice that was low, controlled, and absolute, he said, "Remove the cuffs." The command did not echo, but it carried more authority than anything Grayson had said all day. Grayson's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. His eyes moved between the colonel and Serena, the realization forming too quickly, too completely. I need to know what is happening," he said, his voice no longer steady. The colonel did not raise his voice. "You will," he replied, "after you remove the cuffs." Jenkins moved immediately, stepping forward, his hands already reaching for the restraints. The metal clicked open. Serena lowered her hands slowly, calmly, as if nothing had ever restrained her at all. She did not step away. She did not speak. She simply stood beside the colonel now, her presence no longer misunderstood. Grayson took a step back, the shift in power complete, absolute, undeniable. Who is she?" he asked, the question barely forming. The colonel turned his head slightly, his gaze steady. "That," he said quietly, "is the question you should have asked before you made your first move." And in that moment, everything Grayson believed about control collapsed. Entirely, leaving behind nothing but the undeniable truth that he had never had it at all. The question still lingered in the air when the response came. Not in words, but in action, immediate, precise, and undeniable. Colonel Marcus Brooks did not repeat himself, did not raise his voice. He simply gave a slight nod, and that was enough. Two Delta Force operators stepped forward in perfect synchronization, their movements controlled, efficient, leaving no space for hesitation. "Officer Tyler Grayson," one of them said, his tone calm but absolute, "place your hands behind your back." The command settled over the scene with a weight that stripped everything else away. Grayson did not move at first. His eyes darted between Serena and the colonel, his breathing uneven, his mind racing to catch up with the reality unfolding in front of him. You cannot do this," he said, but the words came out weaker than he intended, lacking the authority he had relied on moments before. The operator did not react. "Hands behind your back," he repeated. Jenkins stepped aside without a word, his earlier hesitation now replaced by complete withdrawal, his posture lowered, his role in the moment already erased. Grayson's shoulders tightened, then slowly dropped as the weight of the situation pressed fully into him. Without another word, he turned. His hands moved behind his back, the motion heavy, reluctant, but inevitable. The cuffs closed around his wrists with a sharp click, the sound echoing louder than it had before, because now it meant something different. Around him, the roadside fell into stillness. The flashing lights continued, but they no longer belonged to him. The presence of the Delta operators filled the space with quiet authority, their discipline replacing the chaos that had come before. "You are being detained pending investigation for abuse of authority, unlawful restraint, and violation of federal protections," the operator stated, each word measured, precise. Grayson lowered his head slightly, the last traces of resistance slipping away, replaced by something far quieter, something closer to fear. "I was just doing my job," he said, the words barely holding together. Colonel Brooks stepped forward slightly, his gaze steady. "No," he said, "you decided what your job was." The distinction landed with finality. Serena Brooks stood beside him, her hands now free, her posture unchanged, calm, stoic, commanding, exactly as she had been from the beginning. She did not speak. She did not need to. The truth of the moment spoke clearly enough. The operators guided Grayson toward one of the black SUVs, his movements no longer his own, each step mirroring the ones he had forced upon her earlier, but now stripped of control, stripped of authority. The crowd remained silent, phones raised, capturing the complete reversal. The SUV door opened, and he was placed inside, his head lowered, his presence diminished. The door closed with a firm, controlled finality. And just like that, the power he had tried to wield disappeared completely, leaving behind only the undeniable reality of what he had done and the consequences that would follow. The door of the black SUV closed with a quiet, controlled finality, and, as the vehicle pulled away from the roadside, it did not rush, it did not roar, it simply moved forward with steady precision, carrying Officer Tyler Grayson away from the very place where he had believed himself untouchable just minutes earlier. The remaining vehicles idled for a moment longer, their engines low, almost respectful, as if allowing the weight of the moment to settle before dissolving back into the ordinary rhythm of the world. Serena Brooks stood where she had been, her hands now free, resting naturally at her sides, her posture unchanged, calm, stoic, commanding, as though nothing essential about her had ever been altered. The flashing patrol lights, once harsh and dominating, now felt distant, their urgency gone, their meaning transformed. Around her, the small crowd slowly lowered their phones, their attention shifting from spectacle to quiet understanding. What they had witnessed was no longer confusion, it was clarity. Jenkins remained near the patrol car, his posture subdued, his gaze lowered, the weight of realization settling over him in silence. Colonel Marcus Brooks stood beside Serena for a moment longer, his presence steady, protective, yet unobtrusive, his eyes scanning the scene one final time. He gave a small nod, not just to her, but to the moment itself, then turned and walked back toward the remaining vehicles. One by one, the operators returned to their positions, doors closing, engines starting, the convoy pulling away without noise, without drama, leaving nothing behind but the quiet certainty of what had just taken place. The highway began to breathe again. Cars resumed their normal pace. The distant hum returned. The tension dissolved into something softer, something restored. Serena took a slow breath, the warm air settling around her as the late afternoon sun cast a gentle glow across the road. She turned toward her car, her movements measured, deliberate, opening the door and pausing for just a moment before stepping inside. There was no urgency in her actions, no lingering trace of what had just occurred. Only continuation. The engine started with a soft hum, and she guided the car back onto the highway, merging seamlessly into the flow of traffic, as if the moment had simply been a brief interruption in an otherwise steady path. Behind her, the last of the black SUVs disappeared over the rise, leaving no trace except the memory of precision, of discipline, of justice carried out without noise. And as Serena Brooks continued forward, her presence unchanged, her path steady, the world moved on, but the truth of what had happened remained, quiet, undeniable, and exactly where it belonged. What stands out in this story is not the speed of the reversal, but the illusion that existed before it. Officer Grayson believed that authority could be stretched as far as his confidence allowed, that control came from escalation, from pushing boundaries without ever pausing to question them. But Serena Brooks revealed something far more unsettling to that kind of thinking. She did not resist, because she understood that unchecked behavior has a way of revealing itself completely when given enough space. The most decisive moment was not when the vehicles arrived, but when he ignored the final warning. That was the point where the outcome stopped being uncertain. What follows from this is a deeper observation about human behavior. Power, when it is not examined, becomes less about responsibility and more about assumption. An assumption, when left unchallenged, tends to grow until it collapses under its own weight. In this story, justice did not arrive suddenly. It simply appeared at the exact moment it was no longer denied. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.